Uh, Anin Buju. Yeah, we're good. Okay, I'm gonna take off my mask while I speak. So if folks need to read lips, they can. Anin Buju Nigijnaga Jaye Simpson. I am Jaye Simpson. I am the Indigenous Curator this year with Word. My deepest apologies for not having eyebrows on today. I didn't want to draw them on. So it's a non-apology apology, but we're in Canada, so we're used to that. Um,
And it begins.
anyways, hi, thank you so much for being here. So we're at a festival, a literary festival, for the first time in a while, which is has a lot of feelings for me. But just a reminder, these lovely people have books, very lovely books. Yes, let's do a little.
Oh, show you guys. Sure.
Yeah, so uh, my lovely authors here wrote books. I've read the books, they're good. My favorite short little story about Conor is I was at the airport waiting for a flight, and he materialized out of nowhere, pretty much threw his book at me and then left. And it was, I'm not even joking. Like, I was just sitting there dissociating, waiting for my flight, and then all of a sudden he's just towering over me, and it's like boom on my lap. I did have a small anxiety attack, but after I saw that it was Conor, I realized, you know what? He's bald.
This tall man in a cowboy
Boy
hat.
There are a couple things. There's a silent auction right now at word.com. I guess it's silent because it's online.
Don't have to talk to anyone.
No, exactly. And so that's ongoing. Okay. Anyways, I would first like to also acknowledge that this festival and SFU are on the unceded territories, therefore stolen territories of the Hamusquim, the Squamish, and the Tsleil-Waututh, in what is colonially known as Vancouver. Very specifically, we are close to a village site called Lekleki, which is a little bit to the east of where we are. And a little bit further east from there is the village site Squatch Eyes. One of the things that I also would like to take note is this area was colonized very quickly by settlers, and with that have created a long history of race and gender-based violence in this area against Indigenous folks. And with that being said, I would also like for us to be very generous and aware of the fact that the folks in this neighborhood who have built community here, this is their home first, and we are to behave appropriately. And we are not to stigmatize drug or alcohol or substance use. And if we see someone in need, it is our responsibility to make sure that our community is okay. There is a long list of sponsors, and I'm going to say 6 of them at random, and that is what it's going to be. First and foremost, I would like to thank, because it's in bold, SFU and the Writers Studio for this wonderful space and their continued generous support of Word Vancouver. So I picked 2 of the good ones.
Yep.
Well, they're all good. I'm going to shout out the one who's paid me the most money so far in my life, and that is Canada Council of the Arts. Thank you so much. I'm going to thank the BC and Yukon Book Prizes, the Asian Canadian Writers Workshop, Pace and Associates, and the Vancouver Public Library. That's who I'm going to thank.
Hey.
And then in the next event I'm doing, I will thank 6 different writers.
Beautiful.
So today our topic is, I did a little poetic title for it, but it's called Our Bodies a Sovereign. And the idea came to me because I was at a reading with both separately Molly and Conor, and I realized that the topics in which they talk about are just not censored in the way that we are often perceived as Indigenous people, where we don't have a sexuality, we don't have a sensuality, we don't talk about peeing. But one of my first experiences with Molly is Molly got in a lot of trouble on Instagram from her mom for constantly posting photos of her peeing.
Yeah. Mom didn't like that. She said, "That's my baby."
And then I was at a reading, I believe at UBC. Yeah, it was at UBC with Billy Ray Belcourt. And Conor read a poem. And after, the only thing that I could form words was saying in front of everyone, saying, "That's horny." So when I thought about this idea, I was like, I'm going to invite the two people who I know are unapologetically in themselves. But also, I wanted to invite Billy Ray, but he's in Paris right now. So, yeah.
Paris.
He's in Paris. Billy in Paris. So we're going to start with a reading from both of our guests. I will not be reading. I don't want to. And so I'm very crisp today. We're going to start with a reading, and then we're going to have some fun little questions and a little bit of a parry, and then we're going to open up to 3 questions. So if you think of any questions, put it in your mind, and I'm telling you this now, so we don't have the awkward 65 seconds of staring at you. Okay? And we're going to start with Conor.
Sure.
You want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'll do the same thing. So Tansa and the Temitek Kitmaskat now, Kakya, Conor Kerr, and Segatsuan, Miskachiwaska Higan, Otsania. So it's Conor. Greeting each and every one of you. Shake your hands. It's an honor to be here today on unceded Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh territories. I am from Edmonton, Miskachiwaska-Higan. My family's been from there for a long, long, long time. In Treaty 6 territory, my great-great-grandfather, a guy named John Quinn Gladue, signed it on behalf of the Papas Chase Cree Nation back in the day. And my other family is Ukrainian from Treaty 4 territories in Saskatchewan. And I wrote these books, An Explosion of Feathers. It's mediocre. I would there's like a couple okay poems in there. I don't like, if people are like, "Oh, you wrote a book," like, "Oh, I should buy that one." I'm like, I don't need to do that. That's okay.
Is that why you threw it at me at the airport?
Kind of. Yeah.
You get a book. You get a book.
It's like I got a better one coming out next spring with Nightwood called Old Gods. A lot of these poems I wrote when I was like 22, 23 and like kind of emo, and like they could use some workshopping like later on. But also this book, Avenue of Champions, it's a novel, but it's doing well. Weirdly.
What do you mean weirdly? It's a good book. It's a good book.
It was long-listed for the Giller Prize 2022.
It made it to the Amazon First Book shortlist.
And won the Relit Award, which is pretty cool because the day before I was talking trash about that award.
You were.
Molly's book was up on the list for it, and we were at a baseball game, and I was like, "That award is bullshit." Blah blah blah.
Did your
blah,
ring
blah,
come
blah,
in?
blah.
Did your ring come in?
Not yet, but it will. And the next day, I like texted Molly, and I was like, I won that award.
The prize is
that one I was talking shit about the day before.
Yeah, I was like, "Thanks, Conor. That was my only nomination this award season."
So it's funny. Sorry. But it's always an honor to be anywhere with Jaye and Molly in particular, and Jaye has helped me a lot in coming to different events, inviting me to different places, and I really, really appreciate that about yourself. So thank you for that.
I love capital C community.
So Molly and I are going to read a couple of each other's poems. If you haven't got Exhibitionist, get this book. I was going through it last night again, and I was just like, this is the funniest thing I've ever read.
This was me last
and I think that's like a big portion of today, and what we'll like kind of read is like, not everything Indigenous needs to always be like so like cultural, doesn't need to be like, oh, we're all like doing all this like really, like there's a lot of humor and a lot of like funny things that are just happening all the time. So I got 4 poems of Molly's I'm gonna read. I'm gonna start with the poem "I'm a Woman Without a Lover."
Oh my god, I cannot wait.
God!
I cannot wait to hear this in your voice.
And it's being recorded.
I recorded. "I'm a woman without a lover, so I Dutch oven my dog on the daily. Masturbate to Zac Efron in the propaganda film The Lucky One. Take a lot of walks to the store for herbs and limes. Talk to the ceiling at night, like, absolve me of this agony. freeze crock pot meals, play the drums on my pussy mound to the beat of Hakuna Matata. Don't worry if I'm pretty. Don't even want a shitty boyfriend to carry my tote through the conservatory. Carry my own tote. Touch a prickly pear. Suck the bead of blood till it clots. Grit is a thing we have in common. Am I right, ladies? Masturbate to Taylor Schilling in the propaganda film The Lucky One. Throw out crockpot meals and call it Con Marie. Idle in the Safeway parking lot, sipping peppermint mocha to Ariana's Christmas album like, shit, that's good. Talk to my thyroid like, why you such a lazy bitch? Watch the days keep coming like, yeah, get comfy, girl. Set the scene like I'm the main character in a movie about a heartbroken poet living in the big city with her typewriter and a chawini who stirs orange bitters into a cocktail with a pencil, then tucks it behind her ear when Zac Efron enters the saloon in a fringed jacket and swaggers over like, how are you single, little miss? Watch the credits roll and think about the next time I'll be kissed.
Oh my God, I didn't know I needed that until it just happened.
Why is it so much more embarrassing when someone else reads it?
I'm such a fan.
I'm going to read a poem called Junior Chicken. Molly and I have something really in common. A lot of our poetry is featured like
Fast food.
fast food. I write a lot about Domino's and A&W, and Molly writes about similar things. Yeah. So this poem's titled Junior Chicken. He feeds me a bite, starfished on his mattress on the floor. Our ankles touch like Lincoln logs. Did I make you come? He asks. A glob of McChicken sauce on his chin. It's just mayo, I say. Send my hands like a scope into the sheets. It comes back miraculously. With my underwear, they want you to think it's special, but it's not. And then the next one I'm going to read is Not a Tweet, Not Yet a Poem.
That's a Britney Spears reference, in case anyone doesn't get it.
I didn't know that. Today, I apologize to my vagina for all the recent shaving and latex and whatnot. I said, I'm sorry, but we're back in the game now and everyone's making sacrifices. Today, an all-time low, I used my sister's old kindergarten scissors, her initial still on the blade and permanent marker to trim my pubes. Today, I used my Universal Studios Orlando mug to heat butter for popcorn and dropped a sack of kernels on the floor, and it was just enough to make me cry. Today, a man brought me pizza at 2 a.m. and then said my hair smelled nice, like his grade 9 girlfriend. So a bit of a mixed bag, you see. Today, my dog leaned her neck into a squashed sandpiper carcass and rubbed. Today, I wanted to smoke for the suppression and to be choked. Today, I read his tweets on the toilet with the shits. There's no such thing as coincidence. Okay, and I got one more of Molly's I'm going to read.
You wrote that book. You wrote that book.
You wrote it.
I
wrote
did.
that
I
book.
asked for it.
It's out there in the
You
world.
wrote that.
Which one did I want to do? I had two. I got to do this one. Boif? Boif?
Yeah, boy.
Boif? Accidental Boif. Once upon a time, we met through mutuals. His shirts were just normal shirts, and wow, that's rare. We went for lunch, and I thought, tall. We did a stupid hug with my foot off the curb. 26 dates later, and there are affirmative words like, missed you, and good at sex. Eating lasagna, then fucking to the sounds of a Flat Earth documentary, skincare bundle for my birthday, leather toiletries bag for his. He made me come once, and damn, what a trick. Ask Google, this mean love? Tired clit say, no, honey. Ask Google, how to know when love? Clit say, when all you gotta do is touch your hand. Accidental Boif touches my hand, and it's like, okay, Paul, from the Gilmore Girls revival. It's like, why am I here? I want to be home farting under my own covers. I know he wouldn't mind my farts. He's a good man. He'd stand in the kitchen with me, scooping strawberry cream cheese with Triscuits. He'd look at my car like, oh, here's the problem. He's not like the others, but he's not like the others. When he kisses me with tongue at the back door, I wish I felt, okay, I can stay, and not going to Arby's without you. I wish. A good man wants to be my boy, so I go with it because I deserve a good man, you see. I'm not fucked up at all. Look at these healthy behaviors. Look how he kisses my nose and remembers the stories I tell him. And look at me, not running from that stuff, standing so still, you'd think there's no place I'd rather be. Molly Cross Blanchard.
Thanks, dude. That's so nice. Wow. What a treat that was for me.
I was having such a good time going through your book.
It kind of reminded me of that scene, but without the cruelty of it, of that one nun going behind Cersei Lannister, going, shame, shame.
Connor's the nun and I'm Cersei.
I think the theatrics of the reading gave a similar vibe, but without the judgment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I feel you. Oh, that was great. Okay, I should introduce myself. My name is Molly Cross Blanchard. I'm a white and Métis poet. I am dabbling in prose right now. It's not going very well, but here's hoping. Novels are hard. Novels are super hard. I was born to the Calder clan on Treaty 3 territory. My family comes from the Red River region. I grew up on Treaty 6 in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, and now I'm living here on the unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. I live on Kingsway, which historically was a footpath cutting through a very dense forest that was used by the people and by the animals. And so when I'm walking on Kingsway, I think about that and I get a little sad. But mostly I'm just grateful to know that about the place where I live. I wrote this book, Exhibitionist, which was published with Coach House Books in 2021. And I still like it, which I think is rare. Maybe I need to not like it so much and then I'll write another book. But for now, I'm clinging to it.
It's a great book.
It's
Thank
good.
you.
I love that.
book.
Thanks. I am going to read from Connor's novel, Avenue of Champions. I was very grateful to get to host Connor's Vancouver launch for this book. We had a blast. We talked a little bit about Boston pizza. You know, Connor and I share a lot of food-related interests, and Boston pizza is one of those.
I also like Boston pizza.
Yeah, no, Boston pizza is great. Maybe that's an Indigenous thing because
Cactus cup of
white
potatoes.
people don't like Boston pizza.
I don't like the Boston pizza on Broadway.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
They got a happy hour,
subpar.
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 I've had better Boston pizzas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've had many better.
But I'm going to read a section where our protagonist, Daniel, is going to ask out this hot girl from the bar where he frequents. And what I love about this is that this character is like pretty rough and tumble. He's like got an edge, but he's also throughout the book just so romantic. He just romanticizes his life and his these like amazing strong women that he comes in contact with, and I just think that's a really beautiful aspect of the book. So this comes like almost exactly halfway through the novel. He wasn't going to have any beer or joints beforehand. Just straight up walk in there and ask her if she wanted to hang out, and then he'd leave. He wouldn't hang around and make things weird. It would look like a movie scene. There he would be, strolling in, wearing the black hoodie and jeans that had the fewest rips and his Edmonton Oilers hat. She'd be standing behind the bar pouring a pitcher. He'd sit down right at the bar. She'd smile at him, say she'd be right back, and then she'd go drop off the pitcher of beer. Daniel would take his hat off. When she came back, she'd ask him what she could get him and where his granny was. Daniel would say that he didn't have time for a beer today, you know, to keep the mystery alive, even though there was nothing he had more of than time. Then he'd ask her if she wanted to go and watch the sunset at the end of the world. She'd ask where that was, and he'd say it was just a ways from the university, and they could meet there for a coffee, then walk over. She'd say sure, and that would be that. And it almost went that way, word for word, except that Daniel stumbled and stuttered his words when he asked her out, and there were guys sitting at the bar, so he had to sit at the table. Also, Granny had insisted on coming with him because she needed a break from all the baking and sales. Also, you need context here because Granny in this book bakes pot brownies for, or cookies or brownies?
I think brownies.
Brownies.
Yeah.
For all of the people in her in her building, all the old people. What do you think? Cheryl asked Granny. You should probably say yes. Some of my friends have had their eye on him, so he might not be available for long. Are these ladies I should be worried about? Cheryl said. Not really. They're more into guys with cars and driver's licenses. That's a hot thing in the assisted living building. I have a driver's license, Daniel said. Yeah, but you don't have a car, so what good is that? Granny said. My friends need cars too, you know. They don't want to ride the bus. Well, I have a driver's license and a car, so I can pick you up, Cheryl said. She grabbed Daniel's phone from the table. What's your password? I need to add my contact. 6969. Cheryl and Granny both stared at him. Real mature, Cheryl said. Oh, I just love it. That's a good passage.
I'm glad I got a 69 joke into a novel.
If anyone was going to do it, it would be you.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
Oh, well, thank you. Did either of you want to read any of your own work, or are we just going to leave it as like a karaoke version? Because you can each read 2 poems if you so please.
Okay.
That would be
Two
great.
poems.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
let's do it. Let's start with you, and then we'll go to Connor.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see.
Give us something.
Something saucy?
Yeah.
Well, Connor read some of my favorites already. Let's see. Okay. This one's called You Have Two Girlfriends. I wrote it, as you might imagine, after I found out my ex-boyfriend had 2 girlfriends. You have 2 girlfriends, and I have McMuffin wrappers on my windowsill. You have 2 girlfriends, and I'm in the bath plucking hairs from my nipples with my teeth. Fuck you if that turns you on. You have 2 girlfriends on my birthday. It's my birthday, and I'm eating a bloody steak at my desk with a plastic knife turned away from the one where Rachel finds out. I found out you have 2 girlfriends on my birthday. I'm 25 and smelling the crotch of all my jeans. I'm 25 in a basement suite with rats that scratch in the walls at night and a coin-op washer dryer I try to shove 3 weeks of clothes in at a time. Instagram says your new condo building is round, overlooks the Riverwalk, and you've got a chaise lounge for each of your girlfriends. I've got a slipper for each of my feet, and I swish, swish, haunt this place.
Mm.
And then I think this is probably my most scandalous poem in the book. It's called Whoever Invented Cruise Control Just Wanted to Fuck Themselves. Whoever invented cruise control just wanted to fuck themselves on a prairie highway. The experience is lukewarm at best. You can't be the fastest car on the road and also have the most explosive orgasm. But now I've done it, and that makes me cooler than you. I rinse my pussy fingers in the last sip of gas station coffee at the bottom of the styrofoam cup. I love to share a secret with myself. Here's a secret I keep telling my friends like an excuse. My body forgot how to make an orgasm with another person. I look like a woman who doesn't have a lot of sex, but I want everyone to know I like a finger in my ass and I'll stick one in yours. Will I ever come again out of the driver's seat? This is on the nose, but sometimes you just can't fuck around. It's cool to masturbate in a moving car. It's not cool to fuck your ex, and instead of stealing all his clothes and locking him outdoors to be humiliated, you ask him to stay the night. The worst thing is to know you're too good for someone you want. The worst betrayal is the one you do to yourself when you tell him, I'll always love you. Here's a secret you should know. I've always been an earnest bitch. I've always loved this way. Foot off the pedal and coasting, coasting. Thank you.
You're such a good writer.
Thanks, Fran. You too.
I just love, like, it's just so, it's so refreshing. Yeah,
Aw.
I think.
Agreed.
Yeah. I'm going to read two poems. They're part of a longer poem. It's from, I'm going to ditch this unit. It's from this poem I wrote called Just Passing Through. It's it won the Malahat's Long Poem Prize a couple years back, or it was like a co-winner. And kind of, it goes on for, it's like a 20-page poem, but whatchamacallit, it's a lot, it's kind of just about like a prairie childhood, I guess. But yeah, I'll just read the first four pieces from it. La montagne tortue ka ito tanan, on share ka wita pasonan, la soleil mu ka giskanan, la castabulu kamise honan. Edmonton to Vancouver. We cracked pack after pack of menthol halls, let each one's medical sugar take us another 20 kilometers closer to Vancouver, both trying not to smoke any more cigarettes and minimize the coffee intake to keep from having to pull over to pee. I'm looking for yellow lines through snow, splooge, stained, cracked windshields to keep from drifting into the other lane and bringing me back to a trucker's end of route. The old Toyota Cool 500,000 kilometers of beat up Treaty 6 back roads ago. Now it just exists to contain its cargo. 2 middle-aged, we're not young anymore, Métis, 2 Labradors, and the possibility that a new city will give us something to hold on to besides anger. Despite its age, the Forerunner doesn't like to move slower than 120, a testament contained to the constant mobility of my ancestors who'd have loved to have bombarded over prairie grass with shocks and struts instead of squeaky old carts that bounced the butt back to the Red River. Though I don't think any of our ancestors made it to Vancouver, they definitely went to Last Mountain Lake, suntanned on the shores of the Great Saskatchewan River. The first time I saw a mountain, I was 13-year-old, straight out of Buffalo Pound in the Southern Prairie, where the biggest mountain was Blackstrap Ski Resort south of Saskatoon. Old garbage dump with a chairlift, a pimple on the prairie. I couldn't keep my head inside the vehicle as we drove west from Calgary, and I tried to see the peaks of everything, to be on the top with the whole white world below my feet. Mountains don't make sense to a prairie childhood. Now they pass in a blur as I long to get off this fucking road. How do Métis survive in cities? How do you not want to throw every computer into the ocean and stampede back up a mountain to jump off, spread wings, and fall back to the highway, followed by a faded rainbow arc of missed promises and the chances that I had to be happy? We're going to Turtle Mountain. We're going in a Red River cart. We're going to wear moccasins. We'll wipe our asses with birch bark. Edmonton to Saskatoon, most traveled stretch, barely 17. I fall asleep outside of Maidstone, and the bumps on the side of the road jarred me awake in a shot of adrenaline that kept my eyes glued to the most hetero highway that exists. So fucking straight. And I was going to meet my MSN Messenger crush that I spent all night chatting with, changing statuses so she could see my infatuated hints through shitty song lyrics. That all seems so important. I don't remember what we talked about. We fucked with the enthusiasm of teenagers in the backseat of my grandparents' minivan that I'm borrowing forever the summer. In every highway rest stop along the way, we drank Bellinis with our fake IDs at the Moxies in the parking lot of a bookstore, purchased with the tips you get from greasy old men at the restaurant back in Edmonton. Get drunk, get back at it. The only thing we eat is each other for a week. During the day, we hide among the bookstore shelves. I read you old Jewish, white Montreal poetry, and you pretend to be interested until your hand slips inside my jeans. When I'm about to finish, you pull it out, and I come all over the pages of the Northern Anthology of English Literature. All it brought was conviction of a promise and a future that turned out infinitely better than what we conceived together. A couple Métis born into prairie poverty.
Oh.
So that the line and then the Turtle Mountain piece, those are old Métis traveling songs from like the late 1700s, early 1800s. And I think that's just like a constant reminder of how funny Métis people are. It's like back even in like 1790s, they wrote lines like, we'll wipe our asses with birch bark.
Yep.
Like as part of their like traveling songs. Like, oh, so good. Yeah.
So good.
Thank you so much, you two. As you all can now see, this is why I asked the two of them to be here today. So I just wanted to talk a little bit with you both about what it's been like sharing these nuances of our experiences in the literary canon, because we've all been in similar situations where we've read and an audience member asks us a question that is actually more of a comment on our bravery of experience. So I want to ask, like, what kind of feeling, like, was it intentional or is it like, well, I know, but what brought this to fruition and that be a style of the conversation you're having with your work?
Well, can I go first?
Yeah, go.
Well, when I started this book, it was my master's thesis at UBC. And so I was pulling poems together from that I was writing in class. And in the process, I was separating them into two different books. So in one book, I had basically the poems that I thought, the poems that were very specifically about indigeneity, and then the rest. And I think it was because I was afraid of how it would be perceived if I didn't have an entire book about indigeneity, about my identity, my culture, whatever. And it didn't feel like a possibility to just have the whole of me in one book. Mm-hmm. And then my advisor, Ian Williams, said, no, these are all you. Like, this book is about you. They need to live in the same place. There's no need to separate them from each other. And that was, that didn't just affect the way I think of my writing. It affected the way I think of myself. And that the things that are not explicitly, perceived as being Indigenous about me are still Indigenous because I'm an Indigenous person. So that's the way I'm feeling more like this book is my whole self now, even though, sometimes I'm not shelved with other Indigenous writers for whatever reason. It's not perceived as Indigenous literature. But that's an industry problem, not a Molly problem.
See?
Yeah. the cruise ship likes you too. Yeah. Yeah, I think there's like I know, like, this is actually part of the reason I hate this book. So like I very much, well, it's like modern Indigenous voices and like big like print on the side. And it's very much to like sell something and sell a grant based off the like perceived indigeneity of something and like receive those kind of funds. Like, it's not like, yeah. And like they would I do like the cover, to tell you the truth. And I like the title, like Exposure of Feathers, but I don't like that little like line on it. And I don't like that there's like very much trying to take advantage of like a Indigenous kind of experience and wanting it to be more Indigenous, like wanting it to like they would love if it was just, about like ceremony and like, yeah, going back and like very much like, and there's nothing wrong, like the works and the books that like Richard Wagamese wrote, like the like rekindling, reconnecting, like building yourself up through like ceremony and like getting back to that. But like for like my Indigenous experience, like I grew up within a very Indigenous Métis household where my like granny told us on a daily basis, but it wasn't like she was like wearing a sash walking around Edmonton like doing that.
Jigging up and down the street.
Like, that's not how people like act and live. And like you can be so much more than just like this. And I think there was a line in your book, Molly, that I was like laughing really hard at the other day. I was laughing a lot, but I'm see if I can find it quickly. It was about like, do you believe in reconciliation?
Oh,
like,
that's from What Do You Do?
What do you do? Yeah, it was like
the beginning of the last section.
Yeah, it was. Oh yeah. So it's like white liquor or brown, fucking or friendshiping, land back or reconciliation. And it's all in like different like font or like capitalization in there, and it's and I think there's like a thing, and this is what I really like about like current kind of modern Indigenous literatures moving forward is like what like Joshua Whitehead and Billy Ray Belcourt and Molly and Jaye and Ariel Twist and others are like writing is more of this modern, like contemporary experience. And it's not always rooted back in like what white settler Canada wants it to look like.
That's very true. When I was writing my book, I had 2 books also. I had the like every ounce of like Indigenous poems in one, and then I had the like non-ones. And one of the feedbacks I got were like, your poems about foster care are inherently Indigenous because you're an Indigenous foster kid. Like that's why you were in care. So they need to live there and be in relationship. And I think that's something that is a conversation that we're having. And for me, I was constantly informed of my indigeneity as like a foster kid. It was always like, you're native, like, come on. And it's interesting because we see some folks who perform indigeneity and they do walk around with the sashes and the outfits. And it's always interesting because you see them in the grocery store getting oat milk. And I go, okay, are we sure? Are we doing this today? Is this how we want to exist? It's oat milk. Like, come on. Just pop on a beaded earring and be okay. I would say what I find very interesting is that there's now Indigenous sections in bookstores. And I was having this conversation with some of my friends, and I was like, my book of poetry is only ever in the Indigenous section, but never in the poetry section. And so what about all those like awkward first dates that these folks are going on and they're perusing the poetry section and my book isn't there? Like, they could pick it up and like, I don't know, it could be reading a poem to someone getting a hand job while reading my book of poetry, you know? Like, where is that for us? Where's that for us? So in your future works, like, are you going to ramp up the raunchy, or are you gonna like give us a hint, give us a tease?
Yeah, well, okay, so I'm working on a novel right now, and essentially the only complete scene that I've written is a lesbian sex scene.
Yes!
Because that was the only thing that felt exciting to me about the book so far. And I told my mom that, and she was like, oh, Molly. My mom really, I made some comment to my mom one time about the sexuality in my writing, and I said, you know, Mom, I have to make a brand for myself. Like, this might be my brand, is like, I'm the sexy poet. And she now has clung on to that so hard and is trying to talk me down from it. It's like, Molly, I know you think this is your brand, but I think you need to just write what the story needs.
And it's a lesbian sex scene.
It needs this. The story needs it. So yeah, it's gonna be raunchy for sure.
I love that.
So I was in Massey Books the other day, picking up Billy Ray Belcourt's new book, and so I was cruising the poetry section, checking out how many copies of my books are still in there, because I always got to do that. And I look on the shelf, and there's like 6 copies of the poetry book, Explosion of Feathers, and then in front of them, placed perfectly to block them all out, was it was never going to be okay. I messaged Jaye. I'm just like, did you do that on purpose?
I have denied those accusations, but I was there 2 days before. You started it.
I did.
This one goes around town to all the bookstores. We'll send videos, especially like the days our book come out, or like there's a thing. So they'll have like 20 copies. This one will then go there, take like a video, put it in front, and then walk away.
That's rude.
And then there were times that he did that, and then I was like, fuck it, I'm going to Massey. And then I go, and it's still there. And so you're just getting the just desserts.
I did just deserve it.
You're getting what you deserve.
That's very fair.
It wasn't me though. I plead the fifth.
There's another scene in this book kind of towards the end, and it's not necessarily a scene, but it's just talking about like the grandmother is talking about her like younger sex life basically in it, and I thought that was just like a an interesting thing to like write, just because like you never like perceive, you know, these like elders of these people who would have like probably, I hope, like a really good sex life when they were younger, you know, and like were just like doing that and having their own like autonomy around their body and what their desires were. But you never like see that really like captured within writing. And in my next novel coming up, spring 2024, called Prairie Edge, of course, I gotta stop writing prairie things. There's
No.
a good
My next book.
My
My
next
other book. My next book. Okay.
there's a good like the auntie is like looking for an uncle, going out and
Yes.
cruising
Snag
around
it.
and looking
Oh.
for it. And there's a good scene where the auntie's out on the prowl in Edmonton looking for him, and it's good. I think it's a good scene. It's funny. Yeah.
There's a very specific, I'm unsure if folks have seen it, but the very specific auntie and uncle like prowl. The other day, I had some drinks, and I was walking home past Grandview Park, and an uncle was like, I was with a group of 6 people, and the uncle was like, "Excuse me," and I was like, "Oh, he's gonna ask for a cigarette or a lighter, no problem. I got you, uncle." And he goes, "What's your name?" And I'm just there, and I was like, no. And then plot twist, this auntie shows up and she's filming him, and she's like, "You've got kids at home." And I literally was like, I am out of here very quickly. And all my friends were like, "What just happened?" This older Indigenous man tried to pick me up. And I was like, I'm good.
Funny.
No one will gas you up as much as an uncle on the prowl.
That wants to.
Yeah.
It's true. And then there's like the jealous aunties and the ex-lovers who will then beat you up
Yeah.
immediately after. So yeah,
Oh
it's
my
just
gosh.
it's
Oh yeah.
a documentary I would like to see.
Yeah.
Do we have any questions? I just want to be cognizant of time. So if we're thinking of any questions, please let me know. They can be juicy, they could be scandalous, they can be gossipy. We have a question over here. Yes.
You used a phrase, you said performance indigeneity.
Yeah.
I thought a lot about that. I'm going to try to teach it. And we do a lot of things where people come into the school and they do different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Different workshops and that sort of thing. Can you tell me a little bit more about where you're coming from with the idea of performance indigeneity? Because as a non-Indigenous person, I don't understand that.
Yeah. So the question was a comment about performing indigeneity and the differences and where that comes from. What I'm specifically talking about is when we're in settings of everyday settings and it feels like the person feels unsure of their identity, so they then perform it, and then therefore it becomes almost like a costume in my understanding of it and my perception. When folks come to classrooms or do welcoming, that isn't a performance, that is a ceremony, and that is a shared witnessing, which is much different, and there's context to it. They're invited to share that part of them. And so what I'm very specifically talking about is there are times where I'm in spaces and it feels like a costume because it is a person who has to feel like they're shouting that they're an Indigenous, which is not an experience that I particularly like. I don't have to do that. I don't feel like I need to have to do that. And so that's what I'm very specifically talking about. And I think it's situational because there are times where protocol demands or dictates a welcoming song or a welcoming dance or a welcoming feast. And so it's very different, but there's protocol. And sometimes the clothes or the things that we have protocol with it. And then when people wear it out of context, that's when things begin to feel performative. Yeah.
It's a great answer.
Thank you.
I don't think I have anything to add. I think you covered it.
I've worked in schools a lot over the years in my other world, and I know like one of the things that like especially on the prairies, I was working in like K-12 schools, and the answer for Indigenous like education was like, oh, let's just get all the kids and teachers to learn how to smudge, and if they learn how to smudge, then they're like good, and they'll all be like reconciliation achieved. We're set. And like, and I just remember being like, I don't give a shit if like all these non-Indigenous peoples know how to smudge. What I need you to learn about is like the 200 plus years of colonial like and cultural genocide that took away ceremony from Indigenous communities, and what effect that actually has on people to like this day, you know, like taking away from true sexuality, taking away from like all these like the like gender of like Indigenous peoples, like all these different things that has now been like absolutely destroyed, and we're bringing it back by like teaching kids how to smudge. Like I'm glad that there's like an enthusiasm, but also at the same time it's like cultural voyeurism, and I'd way rather see people learning like true histories and what actually has taken place rather than just like this like little piece of it here.
It's a very particular window that folks get to look into, and it's very touristy, and it allows folks to step into the parts of indigeneity that people will find beautiful, versus the history where a lot of those teachings had to be hidden away for many years and practiced behind closed doors in basements, hidden in the woods. And it is very interesting because everyone wants to, in my experience, everyone wanted to be on the canoe journeys. Everyone wanted to go to the sweats. Everyone wanted to do that as a fun thing, but then got very uncomfortable when the elders began to talk about their experience in residential school. And so if you want to know us, you have to build a relationship with us. And that comes with knowing all parts of us. And a lot of that is addressing the fact that there is this history of violence that is ongoing still. So it's many nuances, but you can't come to the party and expect to open our fridge and raid it. You know, you gotta bring your own, you know, if that is a metaphor. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
Thank you so much for the readings and the discussion. I wanted to ask Molly and Connor about writing across genres and being multi-genre writers, because I was really interested in, you know, Molly, you published a great book of poetry, now you're working on a novel. Connor, it sounds like you started with poetry and a novel, now writing another novel, short fiction. I know Molly recently wrote this playwriting. Just anything you want to share on your practice of writing across genres?
Yeah, I will repeat that question for our viewers at home. Molly and Connor, you write cross-genre. You dabble in it. No, you don't dabble. You do it. What is that like? What's that process?
Well, I tend to go through periods of genre writing. So I very much started in playwriting, and then I moved into fiction, and then I got dumped, and then thus the beginning of the poetry period. and now and the poetry period lasted long enough to turn out a book. And now I'm trying to fall back into fiction, which I lost for a long time because I had such a poetry brain, and I still feel like I have a poetry brain, and I'm trying to figure out how to adapt that and bring the best parts of that into my fiction. But I really admire multi-genre writers. They're my favorite writers because they bring aspects of the different genres into one piece of work. So example, Katharina Vermette, gorgeous poet and prose writer, and I think really like complementary in terms of what she's bringing to each work. Conor Kerr, incredible multi-genre writer. And Ian Williams talks about going through these phases of life too. He very much will alternate between a book of prose and a book of poetry. So that's a mode of working that feels really natural, I think. I'm not sure I could work on two projects of different genres at the same time. I don't know that would feel not easy, because none of it's easy. But I don't think it would feel natural. But what about you? Do you write different genres at the same time? I feel like you do.
I do,
In the
but
bathtub.
I do in the bathtub. Great bathtub.
Who is that? Capote? what's his name who writes in the bathtub?
I don't know.
Connor Kerr.
I wrote this entire book in the bathtub. Basically,
It's a great
I'm pretty
bathtub.
Sure. I find like fiction to be work though. Like when I'm like writing fiction, I have to like sit down and it feels like a job. Where like poetry, I find to be like fun. Like I'll just be like wandering around. Like I was on the seawall the other day and like a crow dropped a mussel shell like on my head. And like when I was walking by and I was like, that's a good poem. Like I'm like
Probably
you know
thought
like
your
doing
head
it.
was a rock.
Yeah. The crows are bombarding me. Yeah. But I'm like, okay, that's a good like poem. And I'll like do like a voice note, and my phone is just like thousands of voice notes. Like most of them go nowhere, but like some of them do. And like, but I find poetry to be very like situational, my own experience, and fiction to be like work. Like you gotta like I'm like, oh, I gotta sit down, I gotta get into it, I gotta go, and I gotta write, and I gotta like do this. But I don't think I'm really like nonfiction to me is like very difficult because I like to make things up. And most of my I'm just like, I'm not going to research that. I'll just make it up, and then it'll be fiction, which doesn't really work in nonfiction.
I'm the opposite. I find nonfiction so easy to spit out. That's the easiest genre to me.
I'm not gonna lie, it is for me. I can
Yeah.
whip out a nonfiction essay in like 4 hours.
Yeah.
I would love to have a little bit of that more of an imaginative bone.
Yeah. Nonfiction, tough. Yeah. But I know people find fiction like incredibly tough too, to just like have that going on.
I've got ADHD, so when I write fiction, it has to be a short story or a YA.
Yeah.
Like
I'm
that's
getting
what I have.
tested for ADHD soon.
Good luck.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah.
Mhm. It's great. Poetry works for my ADHD.
Yeah.
And then also short stories and YA also work because
Yeah.
the pacing.
Mhm.
it's all
Yeah.
about pacing. But cross genre is something I always love reading a poet's novel because some of the lyricism comes back into the novel,
Yeah.
which is quite gorgeous. Billy Ray Balcott's minor
Mhm.
chorus was
Mhm.
very gorgeous. We were talking about its readability
Yeah.
at coffee the other day, and it was very lovely. Joshua Whitehead's Johnny Appleseed was
Yeah.
so good, and also cross genre. So.
I'm teaching that book next week.
Ooh,
Ooh, nice.
I really liked that question. That was a great question. We've got time for one more question. And if not, we will end early because I need a coffee. So, do we have a question here?
No one else does.
You have a question,
Okay.
yeah.
Question for all of you. When you're writing the raunchy bits, do you tend to turn it up versus how it really happened? If it really happened, or do you turn it down?
I'm going to repeat that. When writing the raunchy bits, do we turn it up? Do we turn it down? What do we do there?
For me, it's pretty much on the nose.
Oh! The double entendre! Is this on camera?
No, it is. I with oh God.
Oh, God.
With most of my book, it is exactly how it happened. And I honestly didn't realize how raunchy it was until other people started reading it and being like, Molly, what the fuck? Your dad's gonna read this? Your grandma's gonna read this?
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, what are you talking about? Like it's pretty tame. And they're like, no, it is not tame. And it just felt really normal for me to write that, which is, probably a testament to, the way I was raised to not have a ton of shame. My mom still throws it at me once in a while, but generally it was pretty accepted to talk about our bodies and sex. And so, yeah, it is what it is. And I didn't know it was going to be the sex book until it came out and it was the sex book.
Sexy brand.
Yeah.
It's a brand.
It's a
It's a
brand.
brand.
Yeah. Oh, I always write like I try to write the exact same way I would like talk to a friend like at a party or something like that, or over a coffee, or just yapping in general, and then I'll like edit it later. But I would say I definitely like I know the scene I kind of referenced earlier in the next book. Like I find it like, there's always these writing scenes, and I think of like the romance novels that my like granny reads, from the store, and the like, his glistening abs and like all that. It's like always such like a beautiful like thing where like most of the time like it's like sex is just like a weird, drunken, messy. There's McChicken wrappers and A&W and there's a Domino's pizza like box over there and like so and I think it's like great to like kind of capture that like other nuance that it's not always this like beautiful like porn star thing that goes on for hours and hours and hours and so I think it's fun to like write that way, like more like realism, like what does this actually look like.
I like the contrast of the reality, especially when it comes to intimacy, like kicking an underwear under the bed or something like that. Those make it more real, and then I'm like, ooh, I'm getting a little window, a little peek, that kind of thing. For me, I sometimes take it out. I sometimes edit down for the grace of, in part, some of my kin who are also in a relation with me. They're like, we don't want to hear about all of your journeys. And I'm like, but there's so many. My Saturn return is coming close, and a lot of my stars in my chart just say sex siren. So
wow,
it is what it is, But but it's a whole section in this book is just all raunch, so it's all there. Well, actually, no, there's more. There's way more. I was like, wait a minute.
It's
okay. It's a lot. All of us are very attuned to our body, and it's neat. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I'm going to end here. We've got 3 minutes left, but we are done. So give a round of applause for Molly and Conor. Thank you so much for our tech hand and our volunteer. Please say hi to the authors and stuff, but I hope to see you at other events. I've been Jaye Simpson. And if you didn't like me, my name is Molly Cross Blanchard. Have a good afternoon, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Jaye.